rolling on the freeway, and suddenly the phone rings. Then I reached down beside me, then I looked on the floor, felt on the back seats. See, I was drinking while I was driving, never thinking about what I was doing. I turned around, and before I knew it, here comes this truck now. The doctor said, I don't think he's gonna make it. Family said, make the funeral arrangements. Unplug the machine, he's gone now.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any
Different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean. Keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Nevis Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Nevis Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Nevis Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean. Keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Neva Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
Good morning, St. Kitts and Nevis. It's a bright Saturday morning here in downtown Bastyr. There are a couple of cruise ships, visitors are out and about, and it's the start of a new month. Nevertheless, we're here on Inside the News. I am Jermaine Abel, sitting in as usual today. Yes, as I said, it's a bright Saturday morning. It has been a very, very busy news week, locally, regionally, and internationally. And as usual, once I'm in the hot seat, I will give you a little bit a taste of what transpired during the week and some of the big stories that we are following. Yes, because we try to go beyond the headlines here to get the people to understand how issues and news, locally, regionally, and internationally, will impact them, their pockets, and their households. And as usual, it's going to be a very, very packed program for us today. We actually have 3 guests lined up for you. One, he's been making the waves across St. Kitts and Nevis. He's about to launch himself as an independent candidate. Yes, we're going to hear from him. I'm going to tell you who he is in a bit. We also have another candidate who will be joining us as well, and then we will jump over and hear a little bit of politics from across the region. We will be joined by none other than the renowned pollster Peter Wickham for the second half of the program. He will give us a rundown of what's transpiring here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We know elections are imminent at some point, and we will hear from him how he feels the political environment is here in St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as what transpired over in Antigua and Barbuda, where the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party was returned. Yes, the Gaston Browne administration was successful at the general elections that were held on Thursday. Yes, on Thursday, where they came out with a landslide victory, which many were not expecting. But before we do any of that, we will take a quick break here from our partners, and then we'll come back and jump right into the discussions here on Inside the News.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean. Keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Neva Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
And we are back here on Inside the News here on Win FM. As I said before the break, I'm German Abel sitting in. I'm German Abel sitting in on the program today. And we have with us Yes, and we are back. Sorry about that. A little bit of technical challenges in the background. So we have with us this morning someone who is now entering what I describe as the bull ring here in the Federation. You've been seeing flyers, you've been seeing a lot of his promotional work. None other than Henry Marsham, who is joining us this morning to talk about him jumping into the political arena as an independent candidate here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So, Mr. Marsham, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Marsham, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, yes. Just tell us a bit about yourself and let us start there in terms of why you decided to, jump into the heavy hitting of politics here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yes, good morning, St. Kitts Nevis. My name is Henry Marsham. I'm a young healthcare professional. I'm from the village of Halfway Tree, which actually include constituency number 4 in the electoral district for the St. Kitts Nevis federal election that, as you say, is imminent. It's about to happen, will be coming up shortly.
Okay, so why? So everybody's going to be asking the question, out of all you've been seeing happening in St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Kitts and Nevis basically for many years have been a two-party system, at least on St. Kitts, and the same two-party system on Nevis. Then now we have a third party in terms of the People's Labour Party on St. Kitts. So the question really is, why now you decided that this was the time to throw your hat in the ring, basically?
Well, actually, it's time to run for office, or I've decided to take part in this election because I'm actually hearing the cries from the people of the constituency and on a whole the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. But at this point, I'm going to speak in particularly about the people in my constituency. For many years, they have been left in the dark. We have the politicians come into the area and asking us to vote for them, put them in office, and once they get elected, we don't see them, and this is a time that this has to stop. And there is a lot need to be done in the constituency, number 4 in St. Kitts, and that's one of the reasons why I decided. And because of my leadership expertise, I've decided to, put my hat in the ring, try and win this seat, and to work for the people of constituency number 4, and also the people of St. Kitts and Nevis on a whole. Too much empty promises. We've been left, like I said, in the dark for too long, and this must stop. It must stop.
Okay, but then the question is, why not run as part of an affiliated political organ that we know, either the Labour Party, the People's Action Movement, and then now we have um, this third party of People's Labour Party, the third option for people in St. Kitts and Nevis. Why go independent?
Well, I chose to run independently because I want the flexibility to work across the political lines and focus on a particular solution rather than party priorities. So that's my main reason for being independent.
Okay, now let us jump into a little bit more of the questions surrounding the politics. You as you run as an independent, you will have to at some point caucus with some of the other people, parties in St. Kitts and Nevis. So, is there any consideration for that right now? I know you said you're willing to work across political lines, but are you um, willing to any line to caucus with any one of those political organs?
Well, I think we're too early in the game to decide if I'm going to align myself with any of the major parties. Um, let's said in a worst case scenario, that I would reach out to the people who elected me as their representative, that, is going to happen, and see if, they want me to, join with someone, well, one of the major parties. But at this point, I'm going to stay focused on being an independent candidate. Like I said, I want to work, and I will work along the lines, and would concentrate on particular solution rather than party priorities.
Yeah. Okay, and I understand that. But as an independent, you basically be solely doing your stuff as an individual. So some might want to argue that running as an independent may not necessarily give you the option of really being in government to make a dent or an impact on the governance of the country, much less to say within the particular constituency. How would you respond to something like that as you prepare now to deal specifically with the politics of St. Kitts and Nevis?
So, like, what I would do after being elected and being the MP for number 4, and I have to go to the House, I would vote on bills that are beneficial to my constituents and uh, the people on a whole in the Federation. So if they put a bill forward and I see that it would benefit my people, I would actually vote for that bill. If there's a bill that they put forward and it doesn't make sense, or we're not going to benefit from it, I would actually, um, decline that bill and that piece of legislation.
Generally speaking, have you begun any discussions? Let's say, have you been doing the groundwork? Let's start there. Within the constituency to hear what some of the issues that are facing the people at this point, and if you have, what are some of the challenges that you've been hearing people saying? If you've done the groundwork.
Yeah, I've been walking around the constituency, particularly in the village of Halfway Tree, and like I said, I'm hearing the cry of the people, and what they're asking for, what they're saying is, we need proper roads in the area, Halfway Tree and other villages, which makes up the constituency. They're looking for jobs, and we have the New Guinea area that we could develop some kind of economic development by working and developing a cruise ship berth there. So smaller cruise ships can come into the area, and we can start tours in that area. First stop to Brimstone Hill, westward onto Black Rocks into the Sandy Point area. So the people in Herefordshire are looking for economic development. If you drive through that area as well, Halfway Tree, Challengers, there are a lot of abandoned houses and properties that need to be cleaned up. There's a lot of work to be done. Also, we need to put the young people in the area back to work so they can, sustain their families and, build a better community. So the people in Halfway Tree up to to Challengers, they're actually crying out where the current representative have left us in the dark, and it's a pattern from time immemorial. This has been happening to the constituency number 4.
Okay. There's talk right now, and I think you probably would have heard a little bit of it in terms of the developmental work that is expected to be undertaken, because I know some level of feasibility study is to be undertaken within that particular constituency, especially within the New Guinea area, that the government is in talks with for a potential docking facility in terms of cargo and so forth. Right. Is that something that you believe is critical as part of you as you begin to talk about potential investments and building out jobs and so forth for people in the New Guinea area? Is that something that you support?
Definitely, I support that gesture.
Okay.
Is it-
This question is something that I think a lot of politicians, and I would like to get your view on it. When we talk about, when we have this discussion surrounding governments and opposition, across the region, we have found that politicians do not want to give kudos to where it is due, but we tend to criticize. Do you believe that the administration of the day is doing enough to bolster the people, especially of your constituency? And also, would you be one of those politicians who would, let's say, give Jack his jacket, colloquially speaking, and criticize the government when they're doing wrong?
One of the reasons why I enter this race is obviously is because I personally is not satisfied with the performance of the administration currently, and also like, to me they're not doing a good job. They came on board with a lot of promises, and we just have a number of empty promises. We need more economic and robust uh, industries are starting out in St. Kitts, and there's a lot of people in St. Kitts on a whole. So we are going now beyond the constituency. They need to put people in St. Kitts back to work. The farming area as well. In Halfway Tree in particular, growing up, we used to feed ourselves from farming, in the hills in Halfway Tree. We used to take produce to supermarkets in Old Road to sell. So we need to get back to that. They also need to generate more jobs for the people and, develop a lot more social activities to get the people back to work, to get St. Kitts and Nevis back to where it was before.
But as you mentioned that feeding ourselves, there's a challenge specifically, and we have to acknowledge that the government is doing its part as well. We can also criticize them for saying that they're not doing enough, but there's this discussion and aspect of agriculture that while we criticize the government, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that the next generation of people are not necessarily wanting to go into agriculture, and also we have a taste, right? And we have to acknowledge this. We have a taste for processed stuff that are imported into St. Kitts and Nevis. How would you work to alleviate that particular challenge?
What needs to be done to alleviate this challenge is that the government should develop a curriculum in school and start, programs in school to make the students to eat healthy and, know more about the nutritional facts about eating local and homegrown and not processed food. So I personally think they need to go into the school, develop more educational programs so these kids and also the parents too, because it starts at home where the parents would actually buy organic food to feed their kids. So I think they need to educate the population more um, about proper nutritional facts in food eating and preparations.
But we have to be we also have to be cognizant of the fact that um, while we want to do education, which is something we have been doing for years, right? We've been telling people eat healthy, eat healthy, eat healthy. Consecutive administrations have been doing that. This administration has done it. The last administration has did it as well. But we realize that people just want to eat what they want to eat, right? So I'm not sure if the messaging is getting across because and you yourself, who to an extent is in the medical profession, would know that non-communicable diseases, they are really an issue here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So how do you actually get that over to the people?
By starting campaigns, because remember, the health of the nation is the strength of the nation. So we need to start new and better campaigns. Like I said, in school, we could even go into churches, youth groups, other organizations. What we can do is actually push the agenda to some activities like during Sugar Mass, other communities, festivals. We need to push these events during these activities. So we don't even have to wait for like school or church or anything. You could go to the highways and the byways, go, like I said, the upcoming Think It's Music Festival. They can also set up like tables with literature so people can read about food and nutrition and stuff like that. So these are avenues and ways they can get the message across. Use these avenues to reach to the masses.
Okay, I want to transition quickly to the economy because as we speak right now, it is one of the major avenues for St. Kitts and Nevis's the CBI. It's a major avenue for St. Kitts and Nevis's revenue generation. You're entering the political fray, whether or not you're in government or you're in opposition. These are issues that have to be discussed. Um, we've been talking for years about diversification. Where do you believe that we should go at this point in time? And do you think we're using the CBI revenues to the best of our abilities as a country to move us forward?
I'm a firm believer in the CBI program. It's a good program to generate good revenue. But I think we could do some more about the program and with the revenue that we collected. With the revenue that we collect from the CBI, I think we should establish a hospitality school because we push tourism as the main industry in St. Kitts, and I don't see that we are doing a lot in the area of tourism. Take, for instance, I think was sometime last year, they had to bring this young lady from St. Lucia or somewhere else to work in tourism. Are she right now, do they have anybody working with her to understudy her? So when her contract is finished, they can take the position? No. Also, like I said, they need to use the CBI money
Okay,
and
hold on.
establish.
I just want to correct you there. I understand where your point is regarding that, but two local representatives were promoted to high level positions there. So I just wanted to correct that.
Okay, so I move on. Well, I kudos to them for doing that. So I continue along the CBI program and the benefits. So also one of the things that we need to do as the Federation of St. Kitts, we need to vet these people properly before we give them citizenship for the CBI program. Because if we follow the news, most or some of the people that they grant citizenship, then you'll hear their names all on the international media about them being money launderers or there's some ex-con and that kind of thing. So I think we need to vet these people properly before we grant them citizenship. But yes, I'm a firm believer that we should continue the citizenship program, but it needs to be strengthened. And we need to use the revenue more wisely. Like I said, one of my things is to develop a hospitality school where we have people not in all areas of tourism, so people can go to these schools and learn about the tourism industry and thing if we are going to continue to have tourism as the main industry in St. Kitts. Let's suppose the CBI program collapse. We need to have something to cushion ourselves to fall back on.
Okay, I want to interject there. I want to touch on two things. One, I just want to go back to something you said, right, just to clear the air. And your point is well taken that we need to do better vetting of the people, right? That has long been a discussion point. But when it comes to that, what we've found, both the government as well as us in the media who do investigative work, is that a lot of these people who are caught up, especially quote unquote the Chinese, they have been vetted, but much of what they would have done is carried out. These illegal acts, these illicit acts are actually carried out after the fact, right? That is why the government opened an office to deal with that specifically, right? Rescind the passports of all who would have gotten their passports and then found not to be living up to the expected standard, right? I just wanted to make that point. But you talk about tourism, right? As somebody, let us say, for example, right, you are in government now, right? Let's say you're elected whenever the next elections are called. What avenue other than tourism? Because as we see right now, and this would be further ventilated later this month, when the Caribbean Tourism Organization hosts its conference, that tourism itself is actually fickle to the point that people we can literally be impacted right now from the war in Iran, because the IMF also said that recently when I asked a question that travel is likely going to be impacted. So my question to you is, outside of tourism, which has long been a major pillar for us, what do you see St. Kitts and Nevis doing to further economic activities outside of those critical sectors that we are dependent on right now?
All right. So what we can do, is to find other avenues, like develop what we call health tourism. One, let's get on and build this hospital that has been promised so long, and land clearing has been done two, three, four times. We can develop what we call help tourism, build this proper hospital where we could have people from neighboring islands come into St. Kitts and have, same day surgeries or, you know, if they're going to be at the hospital for a week. But we can also develop, like I said, health tourism. We can make some kind of revenue from that. They can also develop what I introduced in the Virgin Islands, fashion tourism, which is a big thing. I remember I did introduce that to the Virgin Islands where I held Virgin Islands Fashion Week, and the Department of Tourism came on board, and from since then, been the major sponsor for this event because it generated income for that particular island where the hotels were sold out, the taxi men were making money, the people who came into the event to see the shows was going out to restaurants and different places to eat and sites to see. So there are other avenues, like I said, health tourism, fashion tourism, sports tourism. They need to develop, these what we said, these factors. So if tourism, meaning the day traveler, the cruise tourism fall, we have something to back us and have revenue.
Okay. I just have two more questions for you because I kind of running out of time here for my next guest. But looking at the dynamics of where we are in St. Kitts and Nevis and the geopolitical environment, right? Um, where do you see St. Kitts and Nevis going, um, maybe within the next 5 to 10 years? And what I mean, you're just a single individual, right? And hoping to make big changes within the St. Kitts and Nevis environment. We talk about issues like crime and violence. We talk about poverty and all of this. But then we also have to be cognizant that much of what we focus on here in St. Kitts and Nevis is also influenced by what is happening geopolitically, meaning what is happening internationally. What does a Henry Marsham representative representation look like for a broader St. Kitts and Nevis when we talk about geopolitics?
So what we can do, or what I see that thinkers can do, is basically to clean up the whole environment in terms of, the crime situation, so people can want to come to St. Kitts and spend some money so we could have the economy booming. Geopolitically, also I think that what we need to do is to build back some of the police station and set up the magistrate courts that we used to have inside the constituency so we can take care of some of the cases that are pending and stuff so they can move swiftly. Also, what we can do is to educate the young people and how to help the country to generate income and be sustainable, self-sustainable, um, growing up to make the country a better place.
Okay, and finally, we have been seeing, and this question has been thrown out to you. We have been seeing what has been transpiring. Well, it has two parts. One, we see where St. Kitts and Nevis has fallen. There is a change in the geopolitical environment with a quote unquote Trump administration. No longer we have the world has a right to depend on the United States. No longer can people of the Caribbean, including citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, decide tomorrow I'm going to apply for a visa and go up to the United States. No longer can we have this wholehearted dependency on the United States. Right. Where do you see St. Kitts and Nevis, a small island state, landing within the middle of this entire discussion? Because we saw, for example, at the start of this month, and the U.S. Embassy recently released graphics confirming that Grenada, for example, Grenadian passport holders have to now present a deposit, a visa deposit, basically 5, 10, 15,000. Antiguans have also fallen into that category as well as Dominicans. So, but knowing all of this, how do you, as a representative, let's say, quote unquote here, hypothetically speaking, would make representation for people in St. Kitts and Nevis, whether or not you're in government, outside of government, to actually get the people to understand what this means, one, and two, we're speaking remotely, which means that you're probably not in St. Kitts and Nevis, right? And many people who knows of Henry Marsham will ask the question, is Henry Marsham really looking to come back to St. Kitts and Nevis and make an impact? What does that look like for you and for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis?
All right. So yes, Henry Marsham is willing to come back to St. Kitts and make a positive contribution. That's why I actually throw my hat inside the ring to be elected as the next parliamentary representative for constituency number 4. Also, I would say that what we can do as a people, we can sit down, and of course, we have the embassy in Washington D.C. Our representative, could lobby and speak with people of the congressmen and women of the U.S. and find out what it is that our citizens need to comply with in order to make it visa uh, easy to get a U.S. visa to come to the U.S. To visit. Also, educate the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that when they apply for these visitors visa and they go out to the U.S., don't overstay their time. Come back home, and it would help alleviate the situation of the United States having all these strict stipulation on us in terms of what they just introduced, where the other Caribbean islands have to pay this large sum amount of money to visit the U.S. Embassy. So, just have, like I said, workshop or, open um, conversation with the citizens when they're applying for these visas. And also, I strongly support Caribbean integration. Citizens can move freely to other CARICOM country or Caribbean islands and do well and return home and also deposit their monies, meaning like, if they go to Antigua to work, they can make good money where they can make a good contribution back home to St. Kitts after work when they reach the age of retirement. So, like as I said, there are a number of choices that they have. They don't have to try and enter the U.S. They can do like we said, there's free movement within the Caribbean region, and I support CARICOM. What we need to do as a government and people is to bridge the gap and strengthen the relationship with our Caribbean brothers and sisters, because the other Caribbean islands have good economic um, opportunities that our citizens could go and grasp and then come back to St. Kitts.
Okay, finally, 30 seconds. I want you to respond to this in 30 seconds because I'm out of time. Um, we've been seeing what has transpired recently between Trinidad and the Caribbean community surrounding the Secretary General. Within 30 seconds, what is your position on that particular issue?
With that particular issue that has been playing out in CARICOM, I strongly believe that our Prime Minister, the chairman of CARICOM, Dr. Drew, need to iron out the situation and to, settle the dust, because I support CARICOM and I believe in working with our CARICOM brothers and sisters and to develop a better dialogue and how we could improve, um, you know, Caribbean integration and also Caribbean economic reform. Because, like as I said, there's a lot that we can, you know, get from these other Caribbean countries. So I just think that the chairman of CARICOM need to, sit with the, the prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the other Caribbean members and try and iron out the situation so we can live peacefully and have a good Caribbean community.
Well, Mr. Marsham, I know we were kind of strapped for time this morning. I do thank you for joining us. I know where you are. It's very, very early, right? I do hope you had your coffee.
Oh, I just finished my shift, so
Yes, I do thank
And
you for
one of my
taking the
things, just
time to
before
join
you
us.
go,
I
I
know we
wanted to say
will
that
definitely invite you back on the program again to share your thoughts and have a discussion with us a little bit more time during that specific when you do come again. And I really do appreciate you taking the time out,
just before
early
I
in the
go, can
morning
I just
to actually share your vision for St. Kitts and Nevis.
all right, thank you.
Okay, there you had it. We'll take a quick break and come right back and continue with more Inside the News here on WinFM.
Empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean, keep it green. Vitamalt bottle return.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean, keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Nevis Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Nevis Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Nevis Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
There you had it, folks. There you had it. That was Henry Marsham, the independent candidate who's just about to launch himself in constituency 4 for the upcoming elections. Though it hasn't been called yet, we are in preparation mode as we speak. Everybody is jostling for to get themselves in pole position for the elections as we prepare. As I said, we saw Antigua and Barbuda, over there where Gaston Brown led Antigua Barbuda Labour Party actually returned to office in a landslide victory, 4-1, 14, 14-1-1, which is very interesting. that the UPDF actually lost a couple of seats in that election, which was a surprise to many people over there. But again, it must be that the administration was doing something good for them to really be able to come out with more seats than they entered the elections. But additionally, there was some internal fighting within the United Progressive Party over in Antigua and Barbuda, which resulted in, you know, a couple of seats being lost as well. And there were some leadership disputes over there that resulted in, this entire discussion. But we are going to be joined now by no stranger to any of us in the political arena. We have with us Azard Gums, deputy leader and is the party representative in constituency 4. He'll likely be running, well, I should say, he's going to be running for the next election. He's going to be running in the next elections as well. So, yes, Azard, good morning.
Good morning, Jermaine, and good morning to everyone listening, WinFM, who have joined us on the social media platform and the radio channels. I must say to you, thank you for the invitation to share my message with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and to, the region and those abroad internationally who are listening to this program this morning.
Well, thanks for taking the time. I know it's Saturday morning and many of us have things to do. Wink, wink.
Yes, yes, it
probably
is.
would have had
But
something to do as well. So thank you for taking the time
yes,
to join
no
us this
problem at
morning.
all.
So I want to start first up. I may know you. I may know a little bit about you. Few people may know about Azard Gums. But why did a young man like yourself decided that politics is the calling for Azard Gums?
Well, politics, I see it as a vehicle to actively effect change. I mean, there are other ways in which persons could effect change in their society, within their nation, and within the world. But I see politics as one of those vehicles that can be used to effect change. I think that St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of opportunity for growth. And I think with the right persons around the table, that St. Kitts and Nevis can be pushed even further. I look at those leaders before me, those persons like Sir Kennedy Simmons, who would have built St. Kitts and Nevis into what it is now. And those persons and those leaders have inspired me to join the party, to join the People's Action Movement, which has been used as a vehicle to effect change in St. Kitts and Nevis.
You're saying you were inspired, but you're probably one of the few young ones who are, you're not really, you're young by most people's definition, but by
Yes.
others, you're old, right?
Yes.
But when we look at this entire discussion surrounding young people in politics, right? Um, what do you believe that we can do more specifically to effect change in the mindset of the people, the young people, about being involved in the political discussion? Because it's one thing for me, for you to say, we need more young people in politics. Young people need a voice, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not sure if the messaging is getting across to the young people of their involvement and the need for their involvement in the political arena.
Yes, I would agree with you too, Jermaine. I will say this, that my involvement in politics or my interest, in addition to what I said, really germinated when I was a member of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association. I think what we need are more organizations such as that. I think we could perhaps include in the curriculum civic learning. So persons are aware of their civic duties and understand that they play a part in nation building. I think that some young people have lost interest in politics. You look at it right now and you'll see that a number of young people, they are dissatisfied with politics. They don't see themselves as being a part of the change. And I think that is because oftentimes young people are seen as tokens. I have been part of a youth organization from the age of 14 where I would have been advocating on behalf of young people, and I would have felt that same way at one point in time, that we were often used as token pieces, invited into rooms only to be showcased rather than actually listening to what we have to say and implementing that. I think, and one thing that I am looking forward, if we do, when we do get into office, is to create a plan whereby we reinstitute youth councils, whereby young people could have an active say and role in their constituencies. I am aware of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association, but in addition to that, I think by having a robust youth council set up with young people across the constituencies would give these young people a love and desire at an early age into nation building. We also have to listen to the young
Okay.
people as well.
Yeah, we're having a little internet issues there, but when we, I mean, you, as you talk about this, we can tell that you're passionate about change, passionate about development itself, in St. Kitts and Nevis, right? Because
Yes.
for many of us, we've heard you time and time again across all media platforms, talking about development in St. Kitts and Nevis. And one of the issues I've found, not with you, but with young people, and this is not limited to St. Kitts and Nevis. I was in DC recently covering the IMF and doing some work over there. But I also get from being on the ground in DC that not a lot of young people are actually wanting to be involved in politics, wanting to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the country. And this is also evident in some other Caribbean territories. Um, how do you believe we can get more people involved in wanting to understand how the country operates, wanting to understand certain issues? For example, I mean, like right now, I completely understand it because I'm in the media realm of what is transpiring in the war, for example, what's happening between the US, Israel, and Iran and its impact on us. You, as a politician, would. But the layman and the young people don't really care about that until they begin to feel it in their pockets. How do we get that messaging over to the young people?
I think we have to start at an early age. I think we have to start in the schools, Jermaine. As I indicated, I think we have to instill in the curriculum some sort of civic learning, whereby young people understand their role at an early age into the progress of the nation. I've seen it done before where we have youth governments or school governments. I think that is an important role in getting young people at a very early age in still starting to be a part of a democratic process. If I were in government and Minister of Education, that is something that I would really push into schools and make sure that young people uh, 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 develop ideas at a young age, market those ideas and implement those ideas. I think if young people couldn't see themselves as change makers at an early age, then as they develop through time, they would understand the importance of voting, the importance of being a part of the democratic process. You can't just, in my view, exclude them for years and then just throw them in. There are so many different distractions nowadays that young people have a variety of things that they can be interested in. And so we have to ensure that we shape the youth of our nation at a very early age, get them involved in activities that would promote civic responsibility, get them to love their country, because if they have a love of country from an early age, then they will want to do more for their country.
I like that, love for country, right? And one of the things, and I want to get your perspective on this, and this is
Mhm.
more from a political standpoint, right? we have seen time and time again a lot of our young people, like I could speak for tennis, for example. We got a team in, I believe it's El Salvador, yesterday. I saw that press release yesterday. Um, they're going to represent St. Kitts and they've been doing quite well, Team St. Kitts and Nevis. We saw our Carifta athletes, both the swimmers, the swimming discipline, as well as the track discipline. How do you believe that we are pushing enough into youth development in St. Kitts and Nevis? We got the Final Four that's starting this evening. A lot of young footballers will be on show. Do you believe we need to take more of that big chunk of revenue that we have and of course canvas and campaign that any government revenue, at least a large percentage of that should be um, allocated to youth development? Do you think we allocating enough from the CBI program towards that?
I think we could allocate more, German. I think that young people, uh, it's often said, and it is reality, that the young people, the future and present population of our society. I think that more can be done to encourage them. And I think more, and I think too, in addition to financing, in terms of moral support, I think more appreciation could be given when they represent our country. We look at persons who would have represented the Carifta Games of the recent time, and I hear some parents, some grandparents, and supporters who perhaps were disappointed that they weren't included in that category of individual who left to support the team. And so, and I say this to say that oftentimes I think we need to give young people more support. It's not always money, but it is additional to money support. We need to show them that what they're doing really matters and really make St. Kitts and Nevis more attractive to those persons who are looking from overseas.
I don't like to compare jurisdictions because sometimes it's very difficult without putting it into context. Right.
Yes.
But you have to also make an assessment based on certain environments. Right. We sent the Charles E. Mills Secondary School, for example, represented St. Kitts and Nevis at the Penn Relays, which is literally a big thing for young people, right?
Yes.
And high schoolers performing at a high level, because it's one thing for them to just get the exposure of participating at the Carifta Games, but they made it to an international meet, which gives them a different standard in which to operate, right? When I look at places like Jamaica, for example, they provide a significant platform for their student athletes, for example, to develop, and they're focusing on that generation, and kids take pride in wanting to represent not just the school but their country. How much do you believe, I don't want to say the lack of pride, but the lack of pride, in want of a better phrasing here, quote unquote, is impacting what we're seeing happening with young people in St. Kitts and Nevis? I mean, you talk about support, but it's not just financial support, but other support.
Yes.
Because let's be frank, we have a problem with crime and violence that the governments have been trying to tackle. We saw what happened over the last month, 2 months, right? Is it the lack of support or the lack of loyalty to the country to an extent you believe is what's happening what's actually affecting the young people?
Well, Jermaine, I have studied in Jamaica, I've studied in Barbados, and of course, being a student of the UWI, I would have been exposed to a number of nationalities while studying. And of course, as you say, the Jamaicans are very proud people. They support their people, they support each other, and they take, as you have indicated, they take sporting very seriously. They take any activity that represents their country very seriously. And I think we too need to build that patriotism within our people and within those persons who represent St. Kitts overseas. I think as I have said before, it's not always about the finances, but in addition to finances, it's about the care and support that we give and install into these young persons at a very early age. If they recognize the importance of what they are doing at a very early age, the significance that it has on them, their future, and how St. Kitts and Nevis looks, and they are given the kind of support that is needed, I think that will go a long way. I think we need to start at a very early age. Perhaps it might be difficult to train persons now, but we have to start training persons at a very early age, and that's why I tie it back into something very simple, whereby we look at civic engagement and responsibility as early as primary school. We build foundations of learning and support within primary school, and we take it up into the high school. And so these young people are trained, one, the responsibility that they have as citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, and two, the responsibility that they would have to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis is placed on a competitive market regardless of the arena. So whether it is sports, whether it is education, that we take pride of what we have accomplished, and that we do the best to ensure that our country, St. Kitts and Nevis, is always well represented.
And I like how you said that, because no matter wherever you go, you always want to see your flag waving or whatever it is. It gives you goosebumps, even if it's in the sporting arena, or you travel the world to some far off country that some people can't even pronounce, and you see your flag flying there. You take pride in that specifically, that
And
it's
and
in competition,
and that is
competition,
why
you're flying your
German,
flag, you're repping your flag, and so forth.
that is why German too, that
But
when the Kim Collins
as we talk
Athletic
about young
Stadium,
people's involvement in the political arena,
mhm,
I think this is more of a blunt question. Um,
yes.
do you believe that the I don't like to say, don't like to use the word old, but the mature generation is actually giving young people the opportunity or opportunities to flourish? And when I mean young people, I don't mean, I was going to use a phrase that some people have taken offense to, like myself, but people like yourself, Azard, um, I don't want to classify you as not being a youth, but the people 30 and under, right?
Mhm.
Do you believe that they're actually being given the platform to actually flourish in what they're doing? Because some people have been arguing that the young people, the older generation, the more mature generation, is stifling them, and the young people don't want to do it because of that.
Well, when I was a younger person, because I still see myself as a young person, when I was a younger person, I know that there was the feeling as though um, older persons aren't letting our generation in. And to some extent, I understand there are those persons who are older, there's some persons who are younger, and you come in and you feel as though you have all the knowledge because of the schooling, because of the education, but then you realize that we all need each other. The young people, to me, represent a age, especially in this time, we have so much technological advancement. We are so much information is at the disposal of young people. And what I see it, we need to bridge a gap between those who are older and those who are younger. Those persons who are older have experience. They have experience in doing things when the technology was not available. And young people now have the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge. And I think that there needs to be a stepping stone whereby there is some collaboration between the older and the younger to, to put those two together. Let's look at, again, the example of political parties. And I use this example whereby political parties have to start to think, how can we keep the older persons, but still welcome in new and fresh ideas and young support? There must be a melting pot of youth and experience going forward in political parties and going forward in our nation. I think young people oftentimes have brilliant hopes, brilliant dreams, but I think that though that rather it being a competition between older and younger, there needs to be a handout, so to speak. Even as a young attorney, you come out of law school and you feel as though you have all of this knowledge. And of course, you may have more exposure to certain things that perhaps those counsel of previous years would not have, but they have the experience. And so you maybe have a wealth of knowledge, but when it comes to a particular thing, that older counsel has the experience how to do that. I think young people nowadays, and what I appreciate older persons is that I find that they have been very hardworking in terms of having less but producing more. I think with younger persons, we have younger generation, and younger generation needs to appreciate that yes, you have the knowledge, but you also have to put that knowledge into work. And so I think that there must be a meeting of the minds and a sort of appreciation between both of them, in which both of them can prosper, because I see myself as a young person as well. And I have always tried to learn from those persons who are older than me. I often have been able to communicate better with those persons who are older than myself because they have the experience, they have the know-how, they would have experienced things that I now are experiencing.
I like how you said that. Azard is 19 and he's going to be turning 20 this year, so he's still young people. um, I, you make the point, and I like how you said it there. The older people made a lot. They got a lot achieved with less, and for me, the younger generation now has more, and they're not producing as much, right? They take a lot for granted. I mean, we could look back at generations, and you ask how a family, a single father, a single mother made $100 do for 15 kids, right?
Yes.
I think it's the mindset of the young people, of the people back then, and the conditions under which they were living. Now, and people might criticize me for saying this, but a lot of the young people now do not necessarily take on the responsibilities that comes with the freedoms that they have. And because of that, we're seeing some aspect of the generation taking what they have for granted, and they're not pushing themselves and urging themselves on really to achieve much, because technology, while it's a good and a bad thing, it is changing the mindset of children right now. A teacher friend told me recently that what he has found with his kids, when school closed for your the spring Easter break, to when they got back to school, many of the kids forgot what they learned because a lot of them were using technology, and he was so supportive of banning the potential ban, placing a potential ban rather on technology within the classroom, for example. But then
Yes.
outside of that, when the kids leave school or leave that particular environment, they're still utilizing it, and a lot of attention is being placed on that. So how do we encapsulate technology into the modern society? Because I know you touched a little bit on it. How do we get the balancing act of involving young people, involving technology, but also maintaining that mature mindset to be involved in something like politics, for example?
I think, as I said before, and being consistent with my message, that I think that we need to start at a very early age into the schools. Our schools are a platform in which we could reach a lot of young persons. Young persons spend a lot of times in school, and sometimes the school environment is what garners or what shapes their personality. Many young people come from different homes, broken homes, And sometimes the school system offers that safe space, even if it's for 8 hours, whereby that young person can develop, that young person is exposed to different is exposed to a different environment that nurtures their building socially, their social building. And so, again, I think school is important. It's an important area. I've been a lecturer at the CFBC College for up to 9 years. I interact with young people, and over the time, I've had different classes, and being able to lecture young persons who are between the age of 17 and 19, I mean, every year comes with a different terminology. Every year, you, in addition to teaching them law, I speak with them and I try to engage how they're thinking. And, you know, some terminology. So at one point in time, I heard my students talking about clock it and tea and all of that. And 3 years ago, those weren't terms that were used by the students. And so you see how young people develop, and then you see how they interact with each other. And I think, too, what is happening in terms of young people isn't just in St. Kitts and Nevis, it's in global. We have a situation whereby inflation is on the rise, whereby we were told at an early age that if you go to school, you perform well, you go to tertiary education, you are going to get an ideal job. And now you realize that many persons have been following that dream, and to some.
Okay, yes, we kind of dropped off a little bit there. Okay, we'll get him back.
But yet not able
okay,
to
go
sort
ahead,
of the
Azard.
work. Yeah, yes. I'm saying what has happened is something that is global, whereby we were told at a young age that education is a pathway to success, and we encourage so many people to get certified and into different disciplines. And where we have now, we see that there are a lot of persons who are educated, but how do those educated persons fit into society? How do we get those persons thinking in a way that would be beneficial towards them economically? Because you find that there are so many persons coming back from university in need of jobs. And I think at one point in time, we have to start to consider how can we be our own job provider, because that is something that we'll have to discuss. Government persons, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis currently employs, and it has been for some time, majority of the persons. We have to start to see how we can create an environment whereby the private sector and young businesses, small businesses can flourish. Persons can become creators of their own wealth, whereby persons can go into avenues that would, lessen their support or reliance on government and become entrepreneurs. We need more entrepreneurs in St. Kitts and Nevis, and not just look at St. Kitts and Nevis as the only market, but look at the region, look at international spaces whereby we can trade. We're a small country of about 50,000 people. We should be able to have the population to sustain ourselves and to export what we have overseas, so we can get some foreign exchange, and so that we can get persons working from St. Kitts and Nevis across the world.
Okay, I have two follow-up questions on that, but we have to take a break right now and acknowledge the people who make the program possible, pay some bills, and then we'll come right back and continue with more Inside the News here on Win FM.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean.
The camera
Keep it
is focused,
Vitamalt
Jermaine.
bottle returns. Your bottles,
Jermaine.
your cash, your island.
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Neva Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
And we are back here on Inside the News. I am Jermaine Abel, sitting in as per usual. It's Saturday. Yes, it's the first Saturday in May. Yes, I am keeping your company today. We are joined right now by Azard Gums of the People's Action Movement, a youth leader in his own right. And we're taking a look at some developments, and we're talking about youth and youth involvement in politics and what more can young people do here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and what can we do to provide that platform for them to flourish. Because as we talk about the involvement of young people, you know, we need more young people to be involved, not just in politics, but in leadership positions and all of that. Because, you know, we always complain that they've been left on the back burner, on the stove, which in some avenues, which in some sectors, that can be the case. As there's one particular institution I always said I would never be working, and I'm not going to call it because, you know, I may work in that sector. But we have a lot of young people. We have a lot of young people who have elevated themselves, as you said before we took the break, and they're not really getting the opportunity to flourish within that particular sector or segment of society. And when we talk about we need more entrepreneurs, but are we actually providing an avenue, skill set for those entrepreneurs per se? Because one of the things over the years of actually covering small business fairs and having discussions with officials at the small business department, right, one of the issues that they have highlighted and which continues to be a major problem is, even though you provide a platform for them, it's as if the correct mindset is one and the skill set is not, you know, it's not joining together. So even though you may give somebody $100,000 and tell them, hey, go into business, the problem is within a year, 2 years, that business may fold, right? And so then we go back, we come full circle to the point where we started in terms of, you know, a business. You had a business, but now you're unemployed. So how do we deal with that specifically as somebody who, you know, is still doing it, but somebody who taught at CFBC?
Yeah, I think that what we need to do, as you have said, and in the words that you have given, I think what we have to do is start to think outside of the box. Young people have to start to think outside of the box. How can I look at St. Kitts and Nevis, see what St. Kitts and Nevis needs, and try to develop that area? I mean, there are so many different areas that persons can get into. And I think once we are able to create, even as politicians, a plan of where we want to see St. Kitts and Nevis. For example, oftentimes I think politicians look at winning an election more than actually putting in the work to ensure that there's a plan over the next 5 years. How do we want to see St. Kitts and Nevis over the next 5 years? How do we want to see St. Kitts and Nevis over the next 10 years, 15 years? And not to go off the point, but when I think about that, I even think about urban planning. Sometimes settlements are so, it's as though it happens like you're building 10 houses over here, you're building 10 houses over there. Um, I think that just there needs to be a plan, a proper plan when it comes to where do we want to see St. Kitts and Nevis in all avenues, in all respects, as it relates to energy, as it relates to housing, as it relates to employment. There must be at least a 10-year plan of any administration. How do we want to take, where do we want to take St. Kitts and Nevis and how we're going to do it? And then that fits into entrepreneurs. What areas do we see in St. Kitts and Nevis that needs development? And I think as politicians, and I often criticize those who are in government now, who travel overseas constantly, but you're not seeing the impact being felt on the ground. Whereby, yes, you go to Nigeria and you go to Nigeria so many times, but what has been accomplished based on your trips to Nigeria? Has there been anything of tangible effect? Whereby we can say that based on these trips to Nigeria, as often as they are, that you now have at least 500 people doing this, at least 50 people doing this, at least 10 people doing this. I criticize travel of these ministers because they travel often and they bring back nothing. It's all a talk shop. And so this is what I'm saying. There must be a concerted effort when you travel. What are we going to bring back to St. Kitts and Nevis that is tangible for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis? Traveling should not just be a fly and go. It should be, what are we going to bring back to St. Kitts every time we go? And even if you can't bring back something immediately, what is the long-term plan? And so I think that we really have to take St. Kitts and Nevis seriously. This election is going to be important. We need persons who have a care for the people. We need persons who have a care to see St. Kitts and Nevis grow. And again, there are some young people who don't want to come back to St. Kitts and Nevis because of the political environment. We live in a small society whereby if you support a particular party, regardless of your talent, you are neglected. You understand? Or if you're perceived that your family support a particular party, no, regardless of what talents you possess, you are neglected. We need to start to think about building persons and bringing the best minds to the table. Of course, there is some time that politics is going to inevitably become center stage, but on a national basis, we have to think about what is best for St. Kitts and Nevis and how can we make sure that the best, brightest, and even those persons who need assistance are given assistance necessary to build our country. I see myself as a politician who, if elected or when elected, I want to leave a legacy whereby I left St. Kitts and Nevis better than I met it. A legacy that is not just about political wins, but about what did I do to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis is in a better place for the 5 years that I'm there, the 10 years that I'm there, or more. I think oftentimes politicians and political parties focus mainly on political wins than national wins. There are so many things that need changing. When we look at legislation, we have so much archaic legislation that need changing. I listened to the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda being sworn in and giving the oath, to His Majesty. You understand? Those sorts of things, we have to have conversation, I think, about do we still want to be a monarch, whereby even though we have a constitutional monarchy, or do we want to become a republic? I think these are conversations that we need to have. We talk about the overseas votes, and for years immemorial, it has been there and it has been for discussion, but we have not seen any action in relation to bringing legislation.
That was the point I was about to make, right? We've heard about these discussions during the elections campaign, but we've not heard much discussion after elections about this. Because I could remember both the People's Action Movement representatives as well as the CCM did hint at that during the campaign in 2022. It was the Labour opposition then also, spoke candidly about, potentially moving away from the monarchy. I think the Prime Minister may have, I stand to be corrected there, touched a little bit about it, didn't go into much details at some point during this administration. But I want to circle back, and this goes to the point that I just touched on there. We talk. You mentioned long-term strategies for territories and a territory like St. Kitts and Nevis. How can we? When I mean we, I mean the broader
Yes.
environment of St. Kitts and Nevis,
Yes.
hold politicians to account um, when we talk about developmental strategies, because when we look at places like Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, well, the Emirates, and so forth, those Middle Eastern countries, they had a strategy that by 2050 or 2030 we want to be tourism dependent. They were just some oil-rich countries that you walk from one corner to the next. You're all whittled up because the place is so hot.
Mm-hmm.
They laid out this strategy. They spent a lot of money over the years. We're probably going to spend $10 billion over this particular decade to get this level of development that we want. How do we hold our leaders accountable to ensure
That's
that
it.
we
That's
get the development that is actually moving St. Kitts and Nevis forward?
And Jermaine, that's an excellent question. And I say this: we hold them accountable at the polls. And I say this: there was a
But hold
conversation
on,
that
hold on, hold on,
someone.
hold on, just that. And I just want to add this in, right? When I mean our leaders, because the government is not just the sitting administration, but also opposition representatives as well. Go ahead.
Well, yes, we have opposition representatives. I mean, but let us be clear. There's only so much that you can do in opposition. The resources as an MP in the opposition is far less than those in government. But I get the point. I think that's why I say at the polls as well, because we have the opportunity when elections are called to elect a set of people who we feel would best serve the interests of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I say this because oftentimes I overheard someone saying to me that there was a particular Labour supporter who said that the country isn't going well under this Labour administration. But when the election comes, that individual is going to vote Labour. And when we have persons who, regardless of the performance of their party, are going to vote for that party regardless, we are basically saying to those persons who have done a poor job, it's okay. You could mismanage the economy. You could neglect the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And at the end of the day, just because you are from this party, we're going to support you. That thought, that type of thinking needs to be changed. Politicians need to be held accountable. And unless the electorate hold them accountable at the polls, then you would expect that politicians would continue to give what they think they could give until the people are fed up. And so we need the electorate to speak out against things that go contrary to the advancement of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, Azard, I'll give you 30 seconds to give me a parting message because my other guest is actually in and waiting. I don't want his coffee to get cold.
Yes.
So yeah.
So I want to say, Jermaine, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Of course, it has been a very enlightening conversation. This conversation, I perhaps could go on for hours, you know. I like to talk about plans for St. Kitts and Nevis because I am very passionate. I come from constituency number 4. I was born and raised in Old Road. St. Kitts and Nevis is a country that is dear to me. It is my home. It is where I see my home to be in years to come. And I want to make sure that St. Kitts and Nevis is in a better place. We talk about politicians not doing what they're supposed to do. And I want to be a politician that keeps his promise. I want to be a politician that serves the people and a politician that leaves a legacy behind that says that, yes, he came and he made St. Kitts and Nevis better than how he left it. So I want to encourage those persons to support the People's Action Movement and support me in constituency number 4 to make sure that we take the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and constituency number 4 into a better, safer future. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Azard. We'll definitely will have you back on again at some point. So thank you for joining us. So as I promised you guys, we do have with us Peter Wickham, and we're going to dive into it after after the break. We have to pay some bills, and then we'll come right back and continue with more Inside the News here on Win FM.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean, keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Neva Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
And we are back here on Inside the News. I'm German Abel. As usual, we are live right now. It's a nice warm day on the outside. You just heard there from Azard Gums, constituency 4 representative for the People's Action Movement here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And as I promised, we do have with us renowned pollster Peter Wickham, and he's going to join the discussion as well. Peter, good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good to be with you.
Yes, I hope we didn't get your coffee cold in the virtual space.
That's good. No, it's here warm. Fortunately, I have what they call a cozy cup.
Busy man, and it's Saturday, so we really appreciate you joining us. I want to start with you. What transpired on Thursday, from your perspective, give us a little bit of insight in terms of the elections that we just saw over in Antigua and Barbuda, and was this outcome what was expected?
Yeah. Okay. Well, good to be with you and chat with you. No, it's an easy question to answer. The outcome was consistent with what was expected. Certainly from my perspective as a pollster, and I did have the benefit of national polling going into the election, and this was entirely what was expected. In another regard, we had a by-election that they preceded this election by about a month. And that by-election showed that there was a swing towards the Labour Party that was pretty excessive in the context of a government that's this old, government at this age. And it was about a 16% swing, which was pretty impressive. And I assume that this was like a test run for the general election. So against that background, this outcome was entirely consistent with what was being projected from that poll, and also what was being projected from the actual election, the by-election. But the important thing is that in the Caribbean, invariably, what you find is that when governments win, they lose support after. For government to be on a fourth term and to gain support, and this much support, is pretty impressive. So it's impressive for the government, but it also speaks volumes about the opposition and the extent to which the opposition has virtually collapsed in Antigua and Barbuda. And yeah, they've gone back to a situation in 2018 when the government was at its strongest. So my sense is this election is really more about the opposition than the government. It tells a story, but good on Prime Minister Brown to be able to win and do this well on a fourth term, because usually by a fourth term, governments are scrambling, you know.
There was some chatter that the geopolitical environment would be impacting or would have impacted the elections, including the decision by the United States. Right? Did that have any bearing on the mindset of the people heading into the polls? One, and two, how much of the fact that the capping of the gas prices and to an extent the minimizing or cushioning of the impact of the global the war in Iran impacted some decision making of the people?
Yeah. But those things were ways. I think that whenever you see an economic storm coming, it's a good idea to get an election out of the way. And it's also a good idea to control things like gas prices by capping. Bearing in mind that it's only something you can do for so long. Antigua doesn't produce oil. They don't make oil. So as a result, they can only control the price externally for so long. The challenge, as you know, with economics is that when you subsidize an item, the more of that item the person buys, the more money you have to come up with as a subsidy. So with oil prices heading in the direction, and some analysts are saying it could get to as high as $200 a barrel, the future is pretty bleak for all of us in the Caribbean, because none of us, with the exception of Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, produce oil. So yeah, it's a variable that the Prime Minister was wise to control, especially as it's so early in the game and he can control it. In terms of the other factor, you know, there are always things that will affect an election. And I do think that the global environment is one in which people were less likely to take chances. One could argue that it was kind of like COVID, or like when you had a hurricane and you're saying, look, we realize that there's some storm clouds on the horizon and we prefer to go with the incumbent. And I think that that would have been a factor. But overwhelmingly for me as an analyst, the largest factor in that election was the state of the opposition, more than anything else. But yeah, these things definitely did help a bit.
Yeah. Regarding the opposition, right? Where does UPP go from here? Because at the end of the day, the UPP has lost this is their fourth consecutive elections that they would have basically lost significantly. And coming out of this one, they lost seats. And then now Pringle is the only one again in the House. And then there were bickerings recently just before the elections between him and Lovell. Where does the UPP go from here? Because again, this is a similar case to what we're seeing in Barbados.
Yeah. But that's a good question. Where do they go? The UPP is in a worse situation than the Democratic Labour Party. The DLP has a rich history that goes back to 1962. And the DLP won 3 consecutive elections. They held office since. The problem with the UPP is that the UPP was not in existence for that long. It was a coalition. They were able to win as a single entity in 2004, I believe. And, you know, it was pretty rough going until then. They are now in a situation that they haven't held office since, and they were able to win 2 successive terms. First time ever in Antigua that anybody other than the ABLP was able to hold on to government for two terms consecutively. So they crossed that barrier, but clearly they are back in a worse situation now. I mean, already I've had people within the UPP raising questions with me as to whether or not they should look to form a new party and stuff of that nature, which to me is going to be further injuring the process. The UPP needs to rebrand and it needs to relaunch. And I think that they really need more than ever a new leader. And I mean, we look to the NDC in Grenada, which was in a similar situation, far worse. And, you know, they came up with this Dicker Mitchell, Prime Minister, who led them to government, you know, very comfortably. And I think has done well. And I think that's really the model that the UPP needs to form. I appreciate that it's harder now for them because they've won, Pringle has won his seat. And if he's in his seat, he is in a far better position to be able to, you know, a lobby for leadership. But ultimately, he also has to realize that the writing is on the wall. And he's not going to lead Antigua anytime soon. So if he has the grace to fall on his sword and give leadership to someone that he thinks is more exciting or that they think is more exciting, the future will be bright. If they continue with this Jamal Pringle situation, and essentially him trying to get him and just Giselle Isaacs to pull together and see if they can lead a UPP back into government, they're going to be there for a long time, knocking about, and I think it makes the Prime Minister happy.
My inside sources within the party have always said that there was infighting. There were two factions within the party. That, you know, apparently they've not been able to galvanize, even though they're showing it to an extent. Some of it came up prior to the elections. But what does a rebranding, quickly, what does a rebranding look like for UPP in and of itself? Because we talk about Pringle is being successful. He may continue to win it from now until thy kingdom come. But the overarching goal is to get into government. But he alone can't do it. Is it that he has to step down, as in leaving that, getting out of the political arena? The current crop of representatives have to leave. Does Lovell have to completely give up politics? What does that rebranding process look like for the UPP?
Well, I mean, if I were to say, you know, give the thing to essentially advise them, I would say, look, you are now have to start at zero and assume that you have no support. And you have to essentially do a search for a new leader. I think that Pringle is ideal to lead that charge, as long as Pringle understands that he cannot be that person. So if he leads that charge, does a search, and comes up with the idea that he's the best person to lead it, he's wasting time. So I do feel that the biggest part of a rebrand is a new leader who is doesn't have any of the baggage of the past. And then, you know, there are other stuff that they can do. Once they have new leadership in place, they can begin to look at policy. Some time ago, the Barbados Labour Party in Barbados under Mia Motley did a rebrand where they looked at what they stood for. They produced a document that's called the Pillars of Democracy, where they looked at what they stood for as an institution. They had a process called rubbing shoulders, where they met people in the constituency and told them about their vision and so on. And then finally, they were able to introduce candidates. So I would say that that three-step approach would be a good one for the UPP to follow, but it has to start with new leadership. And while Jamal Pringle is ideally placed to help them find a new leader, he has to also understand that he can be that person. And once they have that understanding, you know, new leadership, and then they can begin to look at all the nuts and bolts of it. But you don't bear in mind the ABLP did that prior to, when Gaston Brown took over. They would have done a rebrand, and the ABLP, the ALP became the ABLP, and they rebranded it in different ways to, you know, present a new image. UPP may want to also do that, and perhaps part of the UPP's rebrand is that they could become the UPP B, which could be the Barbuda, because right now they don't field candidates in Barbuda, so maybe they can convince Trevor Walker to come on board and be part of that mission, which would mean that they would then have two people in Parliament as opposed to just one. You know, things of that nature they can think about. So I do feel that that's what a rebrand could look like, and it's something that's entirely possible.
Okay, let us transition to here in St. Kitts and Nevis. What are your early assessments? Let's start there, based on the fact that elections are constitutionally due within a short time frame. Maybe this year, may not be this year. It's up to Prime Minister Drew to set his date and time. What's the feel like on the ground? What's the feel on the ground here, based on your early assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the feel on the ground is. I haven't been in St. Kitts for a long time, which is unfortunate, because I rather enjoy St. Kitts, especially on Friday evenings. But I can say to you that I'm a bit surprised that Prime Minister Drew hasn't called an election yet. And, you know, if I could whisper in his ear, I would ask him, you know, what are you waiting for? Because the environment globally is hostile. The local environment is going to reflect that. You guys in St. Kitts don't have income tax. Government has no way of raising revenue other than through levies and impositions on stuff that comes in. And that stuff is going to exponentially increase in price because of factors that have nothing to do with Labour Party. So Dr. Drew is going to be overseeing a situation where the cost of living in St. Kitts is already high, and it's going to get mind-bogglingly higher as the price of oil gets mind-bogglingly higher. I would think it behooves him, if we were to use that word, to call an election sooner rather than later. because as time passes, he's going to become more and more responsible for the cost of living, which in truth and in fact has absolutely nothing to do with him. So I'm surprised that he hasn't. The other point that is clear is that right now he has a solid, well, certainly he's prime minister, and there's a solid solution, St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party behind him. In the situation with the opposition is another matter altogether. The opposition in St. Kitts and Nevis is fragmented, and that also is something that's a gift to him. So if I were him, I would say, look, there are two factors which are important here. One is the state of the opposition, which is clearly a bit of a, well, I could say, disorganized shambles. And then you also have the energy situation. These are comments that I would have made recently in conversations with my good friend Mervyn Hani, and so I don't know that it should surprise anyone that I hold these views. But yeah, I mean, why hasn't he called the election yet? You know, St. Lucia went early, Barbados went early, Antigua went early, and it worked out for all of them. So my thing is to try to understand why him and Dicker Mitchell are
arguing
essentially
that critical infrastructure projects that they campaigned on while in opposition heading into the 2022 elections. And not a lot of them are there to show. And people have been saying, for example, quote unquote, the Basti High School, you know, and then now the government is getting pushback because of where, for example, the construction of some aspects of the Basti High School is being done. It's being done in Barbados and shipped to St. Kitts. And there's some public discussion surrounding that disagreement. That's one factor, and then we talk about the war and the impact of the war on the local economy and the pockets of the people are some of the factors that are leading to probably why he's not calling the elections. But based on your assessment of the administration between 2022 and now, looking at that, how do you feel for an administration like this? A lot of young people who were not involved in politics, they're basically fresh into government. How do you see them as being realistically, and I know they're starting at the front, returning successfully to form the next administration?
That's an assessment that will have to come from a poll and to find out whether people believe, you know, and I'm not in possession of that kind of information at this stage. But what I would tell you is the point you made is interesting about the infrastructure and the fact that they haven't delivered. And I always use my comparative experience in the Caribbean as a basis on which to make comments. You had a situation in St. Lucia where for the last 3 election cycles, the hospital, St. Jude's Hospital, was high on the list of priorities. It was a political football. It was something that Chastanet said he would deliver. It was something that Anthony said he would deliver. And it was something that Pierre said he would deliver. Pierre was in a situation where on the eve of the election that he called in St. Lucia, the St. Jude's Hospital was at least 1 year away from opening. And certainly I thought, and I said it publicly, that it would have been unwise for him to go into an election without being able to deliver on a St. Jude's Hospital, which he said was something that was urgent, was doable, and was ready to roll. In his case, he, against my better judgment, called an election, and he won. He won comfortably and handsomely because he determined that people understood that St. Jude's was a process, and they were more concerned about pertinent issues like the fact that the cost of living was likely to increase if Donald Trump continued and whatnot. I think that history would show that Pierre was right, because he made a good call and he ultimately was elected. He did extremely well. He won almost all the seats, and notwithstanding the fact that the St. Jude's Hospital is still not open. It will open eventually, but his thing is look at the present, don't look at promises for the future. I then come to Guyana, where this bridge, which again, I thought would have been a linchpin of a re-election of the PNC. Of course, in Guyana, you don't have the option to call the election when you want. But nonetheless, they went to an election, they won, and they were able to deliver, well, they were able to do as well as any party has done recently in Grenada, and they opened the bridge after. And then you come to Antigua and Barbuda, which is the most recent example, and their thing was water. I did not believe that Gaston Brown should go into an election, even though I subsequently said that I thought he should. But my thing is, why would you go into an election where you have not been able to deliver the water infrastructure that you promised 15 years ago? You're now going into your fourth term. You said you can do it within a year in your first term, and people are still waiting and still having challenges bathing and stuff like that when there's no water. That's the kind of infrastructure that people wanted. The reality, however, is that all of these leaders have demonstrated that this expectation that waiting on a single project that is going to deliver a resounding victory is something that is sadly mistaken. And then even we can go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where Ralph Gonzalez delivered the airport after 4 terms. I think it was in his 4th term that he delivered the airport, and then still lose. So I do feel that this idea that the election is going to turn on Basse-Terre High School, which was a similar political football in that it was promised by Team Unity, it's being delivered now by Labour Party. I think it's unwise to see that as a basis on which people will come back or not, because you will have projects that will come and go. The infrastructure in St. Kitts is not falling down. You know, it's not as though you guys have an infrastructural failure at any level. I think that the more pertinent concern is, who do people feel can deliver on a plan to deal with the cost of living and other pertinent issues that people have at this point in time. Sorry to be so rambling, but I think it's useful to place a regional context, you know, in terms of what's happening.
Yeah, I think the context is actually important, because what that highlighted is that despite all of these projects being promised, there's no guarantee that if they were not fulfilled, that the government will not, get back into office.
Exactly.
I want to ask you, when looking at based on your history of St. Kitts and Nevis, we heard that an independent candidate is now looking to join the political realm, and potentially there are other options as well in some of the other constituencies where independent candidates will now come to come to compete in this election, for want of a better word. Realistically, is there any realistic chance that independent candidates, based on the historical perspective of St. Kitts and Nevis and your experience of doing polls here, that independent candidates will actually make an impact, make a dent on the political establishments here?
No, I mean, that's an easy question. I don't think they will. You have some notable exceptions in the Caribbean where independents have been running and been part of a conversation where they were in accommodation with another party. As in the case of St. Lucia, they were able to land 2 independents who were in accommodations with the Labour Party. You have the case of Asa Michael in Antigua, where he essentially went out and bought the election. I don't know whether any of these independents have the kind of resources that he had at his disposal to buy the election. And then you have the reality in several other Caribbean islands where, ultimately there's no likelihood of success in relation to independence. Or I think we had independence in Cayman Islands. Yeah, we've had 1 or 2 in Cayman Islands at one. In a constituency where you have 1,000 people, like, it's the case in, I think, one of the Nevis constituencies is that small. There are prospects for independence, but realistically, there's no independent in St. Kitts and Nevis that's going to make any impact on anything. And what independents tell me is that they don't believe that there's any use for either of the 2 main political parties. If people were looking for an alternative to Labour, and they felt that PAM could be, or Team Unity or PLP could be that alternative, then they would throw their hat in with them. But they're coming out as independents largely because they're not really seeing any future in that regard. And invariably, whenever independents run, all they do is help entrench the government more. So I would say that Dr. Drew is probably smiling all over his face when he hears mention of these independents running, because yeah, you are essentially making his life a lot easier, and I'm sure that he is anxious to not have to work too hard. So yeah, bring it on.
Bring it on indeed. Looking at the dynamics, there's some discussion, some chatter that potentially here, right, that CCM may be partnering. That's some chatter on the ground. Potentially because, the makeup of the elections right now, there's no guarantee that a couple of constituencies will return to the administration, and they could potentially be reaching out to Nevis and maybe, quote unquote, here, a CCM party may joining with the Labour Party. Realistically, to address that, do you see something like that as being a potential going forward? I mean, it's I think as the CCM last election was partnering with the People's Action Movement. So for a dynamic change like that, even though it's not being said publicly yet, is that a realistic option?
Yeah, but it's something that has to be sold. And this is why whenever we have this conversation in St. Kitts, people say, oh, you don't understand, you're not on the ground, we don't know the depths of feelings that people have. Look, the reality of the situation is that when you're dealing with a country the size of St. Kitts, you're dealing with 8 seats on the mainland and 3 seats at the federal level in Nevis. The idea of political unity is something that you have to learn to live with, and it has to be made to work. It failed in the past, and it failed spectacularly. I continue to believe that the individuals who were responsible for that did not work hard enough to make it work. In the same way that I would argue that half dozen of the marriages in St. Kitts and Nevis that fail at the personal level are because the individuals didn't dig in and make it work. And in no situation is there perfection. And I think that if I were to use the same personal analogy, we are looking at a situation in which the husband or the wife step out and drop a horn, and you believe that that's the reason for the dissolution of the marriage. When the broader picture, which is the wife, the family, the children, and the future of the union is really at stake. And I think that is what the minor inconveniences that Team Unity experienced when they were in coalition with each other that led to the breakup should have been treated. You treat it as a husband or wife step out, and you deal with the bigger picture and close your eyes to that transitory reality. I do feel that there's a level of political maturity that was lacking, and my sense is that the reality of what faces people might really be there now at the level of the voter and also at the level of the politician. And it's not whether or not they should embrace an alternative like CCM or NRP or a union between parties. It is whether or not they want to frontally face off against the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. I have a realistic chance of doing so. And if they want to do so, then they have to deal with unity. If they don't want to, they will become like the UPP in Antigua and NDP, UNDP. People forget, look, all of these opposition parties that have challenges, Antigua, the UPP was a set of different parties before that never really were able to pull together. And as a result, they failed. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the same thing. The ULP, Unity Labour Party, before it was Unity Labour Party, was a set of different parties with this name and the next name, and they were pulled together under Vincent Beach, and they have prevailed, and they were in government for 25 years. I do think that the idea of trying to heal and deal with differences has to be paramount. And this whole idea, that can't work because it failed in the past. That's part of the reason that it should be able to work now is because it failed in the past. So you know what not to do.
But do you based on your assessment, just looking at stuff on the ground and your discussions, do you believe or have you seen or heard that the political maturity has actually moved on? And that comes against the backdrop of the fact that PLP had sent a letter over to PAM for potentially collate with them for the next elections, and you believe, and you have said it time and time again, that they cannot form a government, the opposition cannot form a government if they're not united. Do you get the sense that the maturity is there right now?
I get the sense that, especially PAM, the leadership of PAM doesn't appear to believe what I'm saying is true, or they don't appear to agree with me. So that was the reason why in the Hanley conversation, I took a position that I am not convinced that they see life the way I see it. So it's either that they know something that I don't, which is entirely possible because I don't live in St. Kitts and Nevis, or alternatively, I'm right and they're wrong, and they'll just stay in opposition for the time being. So I think that if they're wrong, it means that they have made a decision that getting into bed with other players politically is worse than being is worse than being in opposition. Which I mean, you make your choices in life. Personally, I would like to think that as a political party, they want to get back in the government. But as I said, it's either that I'm reading it wrong, which is entirely possible, or alternatively, I'm right. And they have said, look, right now, the pain of being in bed with this adulterer is something that I'm not prepared to undertake. And I would take my chances in opposition or out of parliament, as the case may be, otherwise.
But do you believe PAM has rebranded itself enough to the point that they themselves, that particular entity, can actually win the elections outright?
Yeah, but I thought I just answered that question. I don't think so, but I believe that they think so. So the question
the
of
reason
me,
why I ask that question is you get the feel that if they don't correlate with the opposition parties, right, that they may not, and I'm just using
they're gonna continue
may not be
to
able
struggle
to actually make a dent at all, because right now I think they have two seats in the House, and they're trying to recapture a couple more, and they would tell you, hey, I think we're at the point that we can go this alone, or maybe go with Nevis to think, not with Harris. But I'm not getting the sense that, based on some of what I'm hearing from people on the street, that PAM has changed.
Yeah, but Jermaine, you're spot on, and I'm saying to you that that's the challenge. The challenge is not, you and I appear to agree that it's not happening, but PAM has to be convinced that the reband hasn't worked. But as long as PAM believes that they can go it alone and win an election, as long as the leadership of PAM believes that she can become the next prime minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, we're spinning top in mud. Because the point is that it ain't about convincing Peter Wickham, it's not convincing Jermaine, it's about convincing the leaders of PAM that they need someone. And, we have a case in Barbados, which is very, very similar, where the Democratic Labour Party has had various leadership. And persons like myself have been telling the Democratic Labour Party what it needs to do to pull its act together for a long time. The Democratic Labour Party has decided that the villain is Peter Wickham, that I am misguided, that I tell lies, that I am paid off by the government, and things of that nature. And my point is that ultimately you ain't gonna convince me, but you look at those 3 electoral defeats where you have not been able to win a single seat in 10 years. You haven't won a single seat since 2013. And you're convinced that the issue really is me. The issue is clearly something that you're doing, but you're happier continuing to take these kind of political thrashings, or as the Antiguans call it, a political shellacking. And I would say that if that's your thing, if you're into self-flagellation, knock yourself out, take your blows. So
2 quick questions before I let you go, Peter. Based on what we discussed earlier, you said, Prime Minister, basically, and this is me paraphrasing, is behind the 8 ball when it comes to calling elections. Realistically, do you believe it's going to be called this year?
I believe so, yeah, I think so. I think that I think ultimately there are certain forces that will prevail upon him and say, look, we got to do this thing. But I think that to go beyond this year would be highly unwise. And I think that he's a wise guy. So my sense is that it probably will happen this year.
And finally, looking at the St. Kitts environment, the geopolitics and everything, and I know you're going to tell me you haven't done a poll, but realistically, I'm putting you on the spot here, Peter. Who do you see coming out being victorious should a snap elections be called? Well, elections be called sometime soon.
Yeah, but that's dependent on what happens between now and when an election is called, and depending on, from what I've been saying, depending on the attitude and the posture of PAM and Team Unity, and if you go into an election now with the status quo as it is, I think that the result can only be one thing. So let's see if the status quo changes in this time, and let's see whether it changes in a way that is sufficiently convincing to the people that they are serious about working together, and they can project that unity. So I think that's probably the best answer that I can give you without a poll. That I just don't think the status quo is going to rock, to be honest. And I think that if these guys want to rock, they gotta roll with some kind of a grouping. And yeah, so you remain alone, and that's it. So that's the thing. That's the really dependent. I think it's dependent on a lot of factors. What will happen when that happens?
Well, there you had it, folks. That was Peter Wickham joining us. He gave us some insight in terms of his perspective on St. Kitts and Nevis and Antigua and Barbuda. I know we had a relatively short interview, Peter. I do hope we can get you to come on again at some point to, discuss maybe when the bell rings.
Okay. Yeah, no, man, that's no problem. I'm happy to. Yeah, happy to. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Peter.
All right.
There you
Take
have
care.
it, guys. That was the man,
pleasure.
Peter Wickham himself, giving us the insights there. We kind of over time today. We stepped into the news time, but we will have Peter on again at some point to give us more regarding the geopolitical and political environment here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Until next time, I was German Abel sitting in today. We had with us the independent candidate, Mr. Marsham. We were also joined by Azard Gums, and we just ended there with Peter Wickham himself. Until next time, do enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's a holiday weekend. Stay safe and stay hydrated. Until then, do enjoy the rest of the day, and the headline news is next.